Hello everyone, welcome to week 5 of my 100-week art challenge. I'm Michael, and in my videos you can find the process of my artwork and me sharing my artistic exploration. This week I completed this illustration representing the creative artistic energy I feel on a regular basis. This artistic energy is symbolized by curious animals peeking and lurking around the office buildings. Especially when I was doing mundane routine work in an office setting, oftentimes out of nowhere, new imagery would just emerge in my head, and it usually embodies certain kinds of emotion or feelings, which I felt eager to express visually in an impactful way. Last week, I talked about the suffocating experiences I had while attending high schools in China, the overbearing parents, teachers, and the overall abusive education system. I think perhaps partially because of these experiences, from an early age, I developed this longing for freedom and the tendency to alleviate this longing through imagining things in my mind. Fast forward many years later, while I was working in a fast-paced office environment, this similar kind of longing showed up again, and images, ideas, and inspiration often came to me at the least expected moments, urging me to let them out. For this illustration, my initial idea was very simple. I thought about drawing a person working at an office desk, and a big cat is peeking into the workspace through the window, and a snake is creeping towards the person from another window. To me, initial ideas are usually simple like this, and it could still work as an illustration of a simpler style, but I find myself always wanting to add more elements into the composition, mashing up things from closely or remotely related subject matters into a more involved piece of art that the audience has to look more closely to fully appreciate the details and the texture. In this illustration, I decided to add a bunch of office buildings and repetitive office workers in cubicles to enhance the juxtaposition between routine life in office versus sporadic artistic inspiration. Each building has various details based on my past office working experiences. For example, there are 4 buildings inspired by the Microsoft Office software. Each represents Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook. It almost felt like I was doing advertising illustration for Microsoft Office while drawing them. Since I started the 100-week art challenge a month ago, I found myself unintentionally incorporating tall buildings in most of the illustrations. It probably had something to do with my background as a structural engineer specializing in high-rise buildings, and also many years of living and working in tall buildings. And for me, making the illustration more and more intriguing by adding forms, objects, depths, feels almost like playing with Legos. It's a lot of fun. In this illustration, you can also find a giant coffee machine in the center, a microwave, and sandwiches in the foreground building. There's a bus on the left for commuting. Multiple clocks on the buildings show different times during a typical workday. Lots of printer slots on the buildings, and the super tall tower that goes into the clouds signifies the corporate ladder that everyone is trying to climb. I want to mention that I don't mean to use this illustration to satirize or criticize the office work style, or to promote to everyone an alternative lifestyle. For the longest time, I thought that working in a cubicle following a schedule was what I wanted as well. I am simply expressing my personal experiences and feelings of how artistic inspiration often struck me unexpectedly when I was robotically working in a highly organized and efficient workspace in a field completely unrelated to art. Everyone has their own unique path to take. For those of you who also feel this artistic energy bursting in you, I hope this illustration could resonate with you. And I'd love to hear about your experiences with creative energy and artistic inspiration in the comment section below. This is indeed a very interesting topic to me. I never saw myself as someone who has a super vivid imagination, or like a lot of professional artists out there who enjoyed drawing non-stop while they were young. And I know for sure that I only enjoyed drawing and painting to an extent, and I am much more interested in the end results. And also know that I have what can only be described as a flow of energy to spontaneously come up with meaningful imageries that convey stories and feelings. It seems reasonable to assume that other people feel the same way more or less, yet my experiences with engineering schools and careers say otherwise. It almost seems like my schoolmates and coworkers are wired differently from me. And when I was struck by urges to create images and feel constrained, they were not. Of course, my observation can be totally wrong, but if it is true, it can only mean that I was being a chameleon trying my best to fit in while extinguishing my artistic desires. I remember when I was 13 years old, my middle school Chinese teacher criticized me in front of the entire class for having a wandering mind. She said I need to fix it, in spite of my top academic ranking and diligence. I remember I was embarrassed and sat down quietly. However, at that time, I already felt that my tendency to drift away in my own thoughts and imagination while being force-fed useless information was not a flaw. Now, 10 plus years later, I did what everybody wanted and became an engineer in a highly specialized field, but my quote-unquote wandering mind was never cured. Or maybe it's not supposed to be cured. Because I had been trying to fit into other people's shoes, I've had quite a few quarter-life crises in college, in grad school, and eventually in work. Now, when I finally got the opportunity to decide for myself, I deserve to choose a path that's most suitable for me, utilizing all of my strengths. Many people have told me it was very brave for me to quit my career to study art. Based on what I mentioned earlier, I can only say it was necessary. Nobody would think a suffocating fish on a dry land is being brave by diving into ice-cold water. Now back to this illustration. I started with blue sky and gray buildings and experimented with different color palettes until it became this blue, purple, yellow scene that conveys the feeling of dusk. My digital painting process gives me the freedom to quickly change colors and see what works best. There are often pleasant surprises I would never achieve if I was drawing on a piece of paper. At the current stage of my artistic learning, I care more about quickly experimenting and get my ideas out to the world than fussing over the mastery of drawing and painting media and techniques. I also used halftone textures for the first time because this illustration reminded me of comic and newspaper illustrations. I'm sure I used it very poorly. This illustration also looks similar to a painting I did a year ago. I don't think my technical ability improved much in the past year, but letting myself be free in the creative process and be inspired by other amazing artists certainly made my new work look more interesting and pleasing. Finally, here's an animation turning on each layer of the illustration. That's it for the 5th week of my 100-week art challenge. I hope you liked my new illustration symbolizing artistic inspiration and the creative energy, and learning about my experiences of working in an office environment and my thoughts on being different, feeling out of place, and broke free to embrace my true self. Please give this video a like and comment below with any questions or advice, and I'd love to hear your experiences with your own creative energy and artistic inspiration. To see future updates of my 100-week art challenge, please subscribe and check out my other videos. Thank you and have a wonderful one. I will see you next week.